Welcome back to Beauty Uncovered, sponsored by Olaplex. My name is Danielle Frank. I'm your host, and I am super excited because today we're going to talk to somebody that is going to give us a little bit of information about some of the herbs or herbal remedies that are out there that can help with common everyday problems. This is the founder of Kindroot, Alisa Pospekhova. And Kindroot, I have to admit, I've been using this for a little while. It's plant lozenges. We use the one that has the melatonin in it because that is the one herbal remedy that I do know about, other than maybe chamomile tea, which I have at night. But she has a lot of great information about adaptogens, which I had no idea what that was before this conversation, but also the benefits of certain mushrooms and things that really release a lot of stress. I got to admit, I learned a lot from this conversation. So with that being said, let's get started. Alisa, I am so excited that you're here today. I have so many questions. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm excited. I have to ask all things about Kindroot because admittedly, my son has been sneaking the melatonin. He's 12. I'm not saying sneaking. He always asks me, but it really does make a huge difference. But I'm getting totally off track. Tell me a little bit about how you started working with this, like Kindroot. I think this is amazing.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was always that like self-care, beauty, wellness person, even before like self-care was a thing. I was in college and I would go to like a health food store and spend my money on like supplements and different like face masks and things. And people would be spending money on alcohol. And I was just like, wow, this is so weird. Like I'd rather go to cola or something like that. And so for me, it just was like really part of the lifestyle, something I was really interested in. And then I also always just had immunity issues ever since I was a child. Like I was just always sick. Whenever there was a cold, like I was always picking it up. And it just kind of got to the point where with my job too, because I was traveling maybe like 2 times per week, a lot of times flying to New York and back, like every time I would go on a trip, I would know that I would then come back home and have like 2-3 days of a cold, right? And I'm like, I just can't deal with it anymore. So I started working with a naturopath, and she put me on the whole protocol of different adaptogens and vitamins and supplements. And I really started to feel so much better. And I got like really interested in learning more about all of these like herbs. And I took an herbalist apprenticeship for a year here in LA and like really kind of dove into plants and natural medicine. And so as I was traveling, I put all of these like powders into Ziploc bags because I don't know, I just didn't think about it. And so at LAX at Delta Terminal, TSA staff made because they were like, this is a little sketchy. Like, what do you have in there? And I was like, oh, you have those moments in life when things kind of like connect.
Yeah.
And I remember being like up the escalator and I was like, there's got to be a better way of being able to deliver some of these in a way that would be delicious and easy to take with you.
And not stopped by TSA.
Exactly. Like wouldn't get you in trouble. And so I was like, you know what? I wonder what it would be like to put it into a lozenge, because I was already taking a lot of lozenges because I was talking a lot and I always had like cough and things like that. And I was sort of like, well, how hard can it be to put it into? It's just like you're just putting into a cough drop, basically. And fast forward, it's actually kind of hard. And it took me like months and months to figure out how to do it.
It's always so much harder than we actually think it is.
Right? It is so much. I was like, I mean, you're just taking and you're putting it in, but there's like so much chemistry and science and production manufacturing involved. But that's actually essentially where the whole thing started. I mean, it was really my own kind of need and complete like delusion over how easy it is to launch a company.
It's funny because I have this conversation with my girlfriends a lot because of the fact that so many of us have maybe chosen not to really go out as much. It seems like now that more and more people are going out, we're catching everything under the sun. Yeah. Everything. I mean, masks and all, it doesn't matter. We're catching it. So I do think that in some ways, because like, I can't, So I might have a saying in our family, like, oh, I hurt myself, rub some dirt on it,
Yeah, yeah.
But I do feel as though your body does, get a certain amount of immunity. Like for some people, not all.
Totally. Totally.
But,
Mm-hmm.
from exposure, from allowing your body to fight off certain things. But in the same breath, I've been concerned, as my kids are going out and stuff that they're going to be a lot more susceptible than they normally are. And I have to say, I have been handing these to my son only because it's easy. Like it's easy. I don't have to worry about it because it tastes good.
Well, and that is really what I was hearing from my friends too, right? Because they would be like, hey, what can I take for this or that? And I would give it to them and I would check in and say, how's it going? And they would be like, oh, the powder you gave me, it's like bitter, the tincture. And, I'm such a herb supplement person. Like I can take literally dirt and I'll be like, oh, it's not that bad.
My sister is like, I don't know if she's an herbologist or something like that. Mm-hmm. So anytime any of us were sick, she's like, okay, just take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And this, and it'll be granted. I'm like, where do you think I'm going to find these things?
Right.
She's like, oh, I have it on my patio in pots. But the point is like, it would wind up being like what we used to call a witch's brew.
Totally. Yeah.
It didn't taste good.
No. And it's a huge barrier, and my vision for the brand was really like making it accessible for people to come into the category, so maybe they come in and they say, and it's interesting because we have a couple of blends that have mushrooms in it. And I always hear people be like, oh my God, is it going to taste like mushrooms? Because I hate mushrooms. And there's just like such a barrier with taste that people have with supplements. And, my vision, I hope really is that people try it, take it, and they're like, oh, it doesn't taste that bad, but it works. And that opens up a whole world of all the different things that they can kind of take along the way and add it to smoothies and to coffee and try tincture and kind of work off to all of the different things. But I'm glad that you're enjoying it because the sensory part of it was like a really, really big part of product development.
Aside from the fact that the packaging is really, really cute. I'm looking.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to first talk about the one that is the favorite in my family because, I do like melatonin, right? Sometimes it's just hard to turn your brain off. I'm just. And there's a lot of different options out there. The gummy always sounds really great, but it always gets caught in my teeth and like, what I like about this is that my son actually, like a half hour before bedtime, will put it on his tongue. And then I like that it's not too heavy of milligrams as well, because I also worry about that as well. But also now tell me, it says melatonin meets ashwagandha. I can't say
ashwagandha.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that's your favorite blend because that is my favorite one of the children too. I love all of them, but I just love lavender vanilla. Like I love lavender, I love vanilla. And the funny thing is I just heard my boyfriend told me, he's like, do you know that there was a study and lavender, vanilla are number 1 and number 2 universally loved flavors in the world? And I was like, I actually didn't know that when I created it, but I can like look back and say I knew. But anyway, so that was actually the first blend I formulated because I was like traveling and I would always take melatonin with me because different time zones. And that's really when you kind of want to be using it, is when, maybe you didn't sleep well because you were traveling or you were just like stressed out or whatever, right? So it's like that occasional use. But most of them were either like that chalky kind of supplement that I just felt I was like choking on, or there were gummies, which are delicious, but I always kind of felt like gummies either took too long to kick in or they made me a little bit groggy. And as I started researching,
also, yes, a definite issue.
Right. But there's a reason for that. So what's interesting thing is that when you are taking like a lozenge or a liquid supplement that starts to absorb in your mouth tissues, it like goes into your bloodstream right away. And so that actually kicks in much faster than something that you swallow that has to like bypass your primary metabolism. So when you're doing like a gummy or you're swallowing like melatonin, it takes a little bit longer to kick in. And then because it takes longer to kick in, like it's a little bit more delayed. And so you can kind of wake up a little bit more groggy.
They also are a little more potent too.
Some of them are. I mean, some of them, and
most
some
of the
will
ones
have
that I've seen, they're like 10 milligrams.
There's
and
a
I
lot.
always thought that was part of the issue, was that, yes, it takes a little bit longer. And then when it finally does kick in, it's like kicking in to the point where when it's time to wake up, you're just like in a fog.
Totally. Well, and also, I don't know about you, but it's always hard for me to only take one gummy. Like I want to take 10 of them, right? Like, because it's like,
I'm not saying anything.
So for me, like with a lozenge, there's a little bit of like a built-in self-control because it stays in your mouth like 5-6 minutes. So it's like you can't physically take more. But I mean, whenever I would get like multivitamin gummies, I would be like, I think they're supposed to last me 30 days, but I don't know how it's like 8 days and they're completely gone, you know, and I'm like overdosing on it because I'm just like eating them like little candy. And so that was like the blend. I was like, I want to get on my red eye. I want to pop the lozenge in my mouth. I want to be able to like close my eyes and just like have a completely internalized experience of enhancing the flavors and just feeling it starting to work.
Well, I know about melatonin, but I did not know anything about the other. So what is the benefits of that?
So ashwagandha is an adaptogen, which is it's a special class of herbs and mushrooms. There's depending on whoever you talk to, and mushrooms, I know. So it's whoever you talk to. Some people will say that there's like 10, people will say there's 13. Anyway, there's a limited amount of adaptogens. And the thing with adaptogens is that they're basically like internal thermostat controls in your body, and they help like balance stress. And they all work a little bit differently. So for example, some of them, like for example, cordyceps, which is a mushroom, tends to give you a little bit more energy. Whereas ashwagandha is an adaptogen that tends to be like really good at stress relief. It's really good at helping you sleep, kind of like wind down. There's actually a lot of hair supplements that use ashwagandha in it because stress directly affects like how well your body functions and your hair growth. So it's just a really good all around, super popular Ayurvedic herb that's been used for like 4,000 years that just helps to calm your body down.
So I want to like rewind a little bit because when you first said adaptogens, I just was like, but I didn't really clarify like what exactly is that. And I started to explain that these are things that help regulate stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Why have I not ever heard of this?
I think
it's more natural, right? I mean,
it's more natural. It's not as mainstream. The interesting thing is that if you go to like India, Southeast Asia, a lot of Eastern Europe, like these things have been used for like thousands and thousands of years. And they're just now kind of coming into the US and becoming like more and more mainstream because I think people are looking for ways to manage their ailments in a way that's like more natural rather than like kind of popping more synthetic things, right? Also, we've had really stressful couple of years, and I think people are also like trying to figure out a way to manage all the anxiety that's kind of like popping up with all the world events.
I would think that, it's so, so no, I mean, seriously, I'm not a big fan of medications in general. Mm-hmm. Like I'll take an Advil or something if I absolutely need it, but other than that, I really try hard not to take anything. But in the same breath, there are times where I'm like, gosh, I wish like I could find something that is a relief. It's not that I needed something that was prescription per se, but something that helps, that helps regulate and just keep. Wow. You would think, excuse me, you would think that like the next logical thing would be looking at herbal remedies. I don't know why I haven't, other than melatonin. Wow.
No, and I think that category is just growing so much right now. And so I think you will be seeing it more and more. And there's now drinks and bars and cereal.
Like the chamomile and the stuff like that. Like I do like that.
Yes, 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 yeah. And you can, and there's a lot of like really great, like I really like yogi tea. And
Yes,
they
me
have,
too.
oh, they're so good.
So
They're so
good.
good. But they have really great like kava tea. They have like a stress reliever tea.
My
That's like
favorite
full of
is,
different adaptogens.
I love chai tea. I
Chai tea is
love
really good.
chai tea, and my kids are now addicted to it, which is terrible because it's caffeinated, but it's so good. But
It's
I don't
so
know if
good.
there's
Like
that much medicinal. I mean, there's some stuff in there. It's
there's
herbs.
some, I think there's like some digestive herbs in chai tea, which is like actually pretty good. But yeah, they have a really great like sleepy time tea that I will actually, so my little trick is like I will take their sleepy time tea and then I will actually drop a lozenge, the snooze lozenge into it when it's hot.
Ooh.
And so you're like sweetening it just a little bit. It's phenomenal. And then I will
Oh,
just drink it.
my son, my 12-year-old,
Yeah.
loves having like sleepy time tea at night.
Yeah.
It's just like a little ritual. We don't do it all the time, but he does like it. And he loves Alisa. I wonder if I should try doing that. I'm
It's
going to do that
awesome. Yeah.
tonight.
That's like my new, it was funny. I was like making my tea and I had a lozenge I was going to take. And then one day I was like, well, I could just like add it to it. And it like, give it a couple of minutes. It totally dissolves. It's fabulous. On the days I don't feel like having the lozenge or I'm having a tea and it's just like too much to manage having both. It's delicious.
So, I mean, I want to talk a little bit about the other, because it's not like you have like this extensive line that is like really difficult to manage. You have a few different ones that have selective benefits. So I know there's Defend, which has the vitamin C, and the reishi mushroom. What's the benefit of the reishi?
The reishi mushroom is called the mushroom of immortality. So it's a really, really like favorite mushroom in Chinese traditional medicine. And it's a great immune booster. So it has like a really high concentration of compounds that basically help your immune system function better. It's also like a stress reliever and just like an overall kind of calmative, but in the Defend blend, it's paired with vitamin C for really kind of like an immune boosting effect.
I think that the stress reliever part is like it's the most appealing. I feel as though the world as a whole has been stressed out.
Totally stressed out. Well, and I think that at the end of the day, like stress affects everything, right? So it's like if you start looking at it, you're a lot of times can't sleep because you're stressed out and you're going, and your cortisol levels are just like too high to where your body is in that flight response and you just like can't wind down.
Yes.
Your immune system will also be affected if you're stressed out because again, you're like running on empty and your stress is just like sucking everything out of it. And this is the same thing where people will be like, I have dry skin, my hair is falling out, my hair is not growing.
Just talking about sleep deprivation. Like if I am in a state of sleep deprivation, I'm a freaking mess. And I'm not just talking about like, oh, I'm tired, I'm run down and stressed out. I mean, right down to that's when I start getting headaches. That's when I start catching colds. That's when, everything that could like helter skelter will happen if I have too many days of lack of sleep. It becomes an issue.
I'm the same. I'm also just like a horrible person to be around if I'm sleep deprived.
I am too.
Like I'm just awful. Like I'm always like, I'm sorry in advance. Like I did not get enough sleep this week. Like I'm just terrible.
I have a ritual with my kids that like I will try to function the best I can. But there's that like point. It's just before the breaking point, just before. And I'll sit there and I'll be like, all right, I need you to understand something. That mom is at that point, just there. So if we can avoid me tripping over, I'd appreciate it. They're like, no problem, mom.
That is
we've
good.
Avoided a lot of issues just with that little communication. Wow. So, I mean, aside from the Defend and of course the melatonin, what else? Yeah. What else do you have?
So we have a mood one too, which has L-theanine, which is an amino acid that helps boost like serotonin and dopamine in your brain. So it helps to like mood boost, again, kind of a stress reliever. Like you'll hear me kind of go back to stress as being like very much a core center of like each one of the blends. It also has reishi mushroom on it because reishi mushroom is also mood boosting. The mood one is actually also a great one to take before bed if you don't want to take melatonin, because L-theanine like during the day can help you with like mood and soothing, but before bed people also really like it to help you fall asleep, maybe in a night where you're like, I want to wind down but I don't need something as strong as melatonin necessarily. So it can kind of like function both ways. We have a focus one that is currently being reformulated, so we'll launch in a couple of months with like a new fun ingredient that I'm hoping like works in lab testing this week. And it has a similar like vitamin and adaptogen blend to it. And then we have a glow one that has marine collagen and ashwagandha as well, which is just kind of like a very refreshing, rejuvenating blend.
So if there was someone that was looking for something, I mean, I think the stress release part is like huge. I think that's a huge one. But I don't know. I sit there and I go, what would you recommend someone if they were trying to find something that was functional to them? But I guess it really depends on what's going on in their lives, right?
It really does. I mean, all of the blends were developed in a way where you could like mix and match them. So you could take like defend, mood, and focus and snooze all kind of like in one day because they all have like different vitamins and minerals. My favorite combo honestly is mood and snooze, because I just think it like L-theanine and melatonin and reishi and ashwagandha, they just work really well together. And then if somebody doesn't need the sleep effect, then I feel like defend is a great travel one with vitamin C. And then you have mood is another one that you can kind of like mix and match throughout the day too. So those are like my top three, and those are the best sellers for us, the snooze, mood, and defend.
So if you had a fantasy of what you could do from here, like you're doing gems and everything, if you had a fantasy of where you can go with all this, like what would you love to do?
I want to keep on sort of innovating and bring herbs in a really fun and unexpected ways, right? So there's already a lot of people who are doing powders and tinctures and gummies, and whatever we innovate in Kindroot, like I always want it to be kind of unexpected. So we're the only ones right now doing lozenges, and everything that I do will be like something that hasn't necessarily been done. It should always be enjoyable. It should always be fun. It should always be really, really accessible. And that's kind of on the product side. And then generally on the company side, I really, really want to, go stronger into purpose. I think the first 2 years was really kind of about surviving, quite honestly, and just like making it work. And now that I feel like we have a good customer base, I'm really focusing on working with herbalists, working with communities. And we'll have a partnership launching later in the year around, support for like community gardens and free clinics and seed programs with a really great kind of independent herbalist organization that I feel like we can support.
I love it. I have to admit, it really has made a big difference. And like I said, I do have the gummies in my house, but I have to admit, we always go right back to this. So
I love hearing that.
Appreciated in this family for sure. But thank you so much for coming on. This was such a great conversation. And I really do encourage everybody to go to your website, which is Kindroot, correct? Kindroot.com?
Yeah.
And also you have all these great social media as well. You're on Instagram. So you definitely hop on there. Are you on like anything like TikTok or anything?
I'm on TikTok, and I say that as I cringe because, it's so hard watching yourself on TikTok. I'm like, oh my God, I need to do more on TikTok. And that's actually the weekend project. But we're on Pinterest, which is actually a great place where we do a lot of different like tips and tricks and wellness. And I bring on different experts and herbalists to write blog posts, and then we link to them on Pinterest. And then I always love when people sign up for a newsletter too, because we have a lot of fun giveaways and partnerships and things like that. It's not just product emails that we'll send every single month. So
I love it when a company really wants to do education and really, just above and beyond all of that, because it becomes more of a purpose, right? It's a lot more than just, selling a product, right?
It is. And I think, it's one of those things where there are brands where it's like, I'm just getting things like product emails from them. And after a while I've subscribed to them. Like, look, I know you're trying to sell me a body lotion or whatever it is. Like, when I need one, I will go and buy it. Right. And then there are brands that really just provide something where I'm like, oh, that's a cool recipe. Oh, I didn't know this was like a way to use a hair mask. And then I think I stay a lot more engaged and connected to them. So I really want to build a community around people, and, be a place for like resource and information and kind of inspiration too.
Well, I mean, sign me on because I do definitely need to do a little bit more education and deep diving into this because, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the mainstream stuff. Not saying that it's
Mhm.
bad, not saying that's bad, just it's
Yeah.
not my cup of tea. And I like the alternative a little bit more. So thank you so much for coming on and telling us a little bit about it.